Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm hyper excited to be here. I've been in the philanthropy sector for 25 years, so I'm really looking forward to engaging with the new community. The London community are quite hard to talk to, and they're very quiet, and they don't engage. So as I said, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys and hearing your views, because for me, it's a small community, and we really want to understand what you guys do or don't know and what you'd like to understand some more. So when we get to the questions, please do ask, scribble them down while we're talking, use this time effectively for you so it's just not a waste of your morning. So there are two words in this discussion, philanthropy and sustainability, and there are big, broad terms, and they're very nuanced between them. I really hope at the end of the session, you guys all feel comfortable understanding what the words mean. We're going to talk through how we all understand them, but for me, it's just really important that you're confident. This is how I use the word philanthropy if I'm talking to clients or other people. This is how I understand sustainability if I'm talking to other people about it. There are complicated jargon-filled words, but for this conversation, we're going to think finance first. So really, what financial returns am I getting? I don't care where the money's going, child slavery or whatever. Impact-driven. What good things are being done with my money, and am I going to get a financial return from it? Or philanthropy first, which is handing over money, your returns are what good things are done, so it's not about your financial incentive. So we're going to introduce all of ourselves and explain how we feel that we fit into each of those buckets, and then we're going to go through a set of questions. As I said, please do ask questions at the end. We've got sort of half an hour before we're going to open the floor to questions. And to be honest, if you don't ask questions, I'm going to sit here and gossip with the panel because they're all fantastic. I know all of them, so I'm going to make this an effective use of my time if you refuse to do the same. Happy days. So, should probably start. I'm Juliet Valdinger. I fall under the very vague term holistic philanthropy advisor. When I talk about philanthropy, I use the Greek playwright definition that it's a love of humanity. It's very simple. Helping somebody cross the road is a philanthropic gesture. It's a love of humanity. In my mind, you don't need to be Bill Gates to be a philanthropist. You just need to be decent to the world around you. That's my definition. If somebody talks about philanthropy to me, that is how I interpret it. So what do I provide my clients? It ranges, because my interest is working with clients who have excess capital and they want to do something good with it, but have no idea where to start. They've inherited it. They've divorced. Their spouse has passed away. They've had a big sellout. What do I do? They don't want to talk to charities because they're going to be fundraised at. They might not want to talk to their peers because they're going to want to get taken for dinner left, right, and centre. So I give free half-hour workshops or 4-hour workshops, which are followed by a personalised dummies guide to being a philanthropist. And it's full of people I can introduce them to who can help them along their pathway. So that's kind of how I fit with it. So I'm going to go through my panel, fantastic panel now, and they can explain where they fit into it, and then we'll kick off in questions. That okay with panel? Cool. Rachel, kick us off. You're first.
Hi, thank you.
I can relax now.
So I'm head of philanthropy at the Charity Service, and we are a donor-advised fund provider and a grant-making charity. We're based in Manchester, but we work with a national client base, and we facilitate charitable giving nationally and internationally. So in terms of where we fit within that spectrum that Juliet really helpfully aligned is we are very much in the philanthropy space. So donor-advised funds, for those who aren't aware of them, they're a mechanism for charitable giving. So we could say philanthropy, but many of our donors don't feel very comfortable describing themselves as a philanthropist. It's quite a loaded term. But for people and companies who are looking to make relatively significant gifts to charity over time, rather than setting up your own charitable trust, you can open a donor-advised fund. There is an investment component to that. Those funds can be invested whilst you're waiting for them to be granted, but our focus is really on helping people to make charitable giving easy and straightforward and make grants to charities that need them.
Nancy, go for it.
Right. Well, we're an outlier, I guess, on this a bit. We are a mechanism for international, particularly, but not necessarily, philanthropy and charities. So we work with both communities. We work with the individuals who want to make donations. We offer donor-advised funds, but we also offer ways for them to support a foreign organization tax effectively from their own countries. We have foundations in the US, UK, Canada, Europe, Switzerland, Hong Kong, etc. So we get to see what philanthropy looks like and what giving and investing in philanthropy looks like around the world, which is quite interesting and at the moment, I think a bit scary, particularly when America decided to close down things like USAID, which decimated 20% of the Genevan NGO population. So philanthropy does make, and whether the philanthropy is coming from individuals, from companies, from government, from private trusts and foundations, it does make a huge difference in the world, and one or two small actions have huge ripples. So we work with the donors, we work with the charities, we have the mechanisms is really our area of expertise through which money flows internationally. And we've been doing it for quite a long time. As a matter of fact, I was at an event and I said to someone that we started the day that Princess Diana died. And the person that I was talking to said, I wasn't alive then. And I thought, I feel very, very old. So anyway, so philanthropy is, it's a very old concept. And depending on where you want to go with it, it goes back to, obviously, the start of humanity.
Great. Kate?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Kate Quentin. I'm the head of wealth management at Tribe Impact Capital. Tribe is the UK's kind of only pure play impact wealth manager. So we're 10 years old this year, actually. And we kind of founded Tribe to solve two problems, one of which was sort of referred to in the last session, was this problem of people being totally disengaged with their wealth. And also this issue that the financial services sector was really struggling to understand what the kind of environmental and social impact is of our capital. And so we wanted to start a business where we felt that we could both show what the impact was of money, but also get people much more engaged in their wealth. And we actually, the sort of, I suppose, the end to that story is that we think the two work hand in hand with one another. We look after clients, we look after individual clients, private clients, charities, institutions. We have a whole swathe of things. We manage portfolios for them. I can do a little bit more definition of impact investing as we move along, perhaps.
Great. I hope that's making sense to everybody about who my fantastic panel are. Going to kick off with questions, and I'm going to target Kate with the first one. Starting with, what are people talking about when they raise the topic of philanthropy or sustainability? Where is the synergy between philanthropy and sustainability? Now, I've explained how I interpret the word philanthropy, love of humanity. If I'm talking to people about sustainability, again, I'm just very simple about it. Sustainability to me is just what lasts. Your philanthropy is sustainable, your philanthropy has long-term impact. Your investment is sustainable, it has long-term impact. Sustainable clothes, sustainable computers, it's things that are going to last. Sustainable work, it's things that are going to last. But I think the philanthropy and sustainability world, it makes it really full of jargon, and so for me it's making it really simple. But I know the panel uses the word slightly differently or with the same intention with their clients. But I'd be really interested to hear from Kate how she addresses it when clients talk to her about philanthropy, that's a new word, philanthropy, can't say the word, and sustainability together, particularly with the hat of investments on it. Kate, what do you think?
Maybe we've just coined a new concept here and now.
I quite like that.
So I'll just start with one kind of observation. So one of the things that I have previously, before I worked at Tribe, worked in a lot of more traditional organizations as a wealth manager. And one of the things that kind of always got me very interested is that you'd be going to speak to clients about their investment portfolio, and you were sort of frankly looking down the barrel of a fairly boring conversation again about kind of risk, return, whether you'd done well that year. And I used to observe that my colleagues who would be in the philanthropy team and advising clients, when they walked into a room, clients suddenly lit up and were so excited to have a conversation with them. And one of the things that I was thinking about a long time ago really was, hang on a second, I want to talk to people about their investments and for them to get as excited as they do with my friends in the philanthropy team. And so one of the things at Tribe we've always tried to do is kind of combine the two, and that's just something maybe for people to have a bit of a think about. In terms of kind of how we define sustainability at Tribe, it really goes back to, I'm sure people are fairly familiar with Kate Raworth and this concept of donut economics, which is essentially this sense that we have planetary boundaries and we have social foundations that we have to support. And what you really want to do is live within that donut. So that's how we live sustainably in the world today. We use the UN Sustainable Development Goals as the kind of route to achieving that donut, if you like. So they are not an investment paradigm, those 17 goals, but they are a very good way of thinking about how we live on Earth more sustainably. And the great thing about SDGs is that they can be applied across your giving, your investments, all sorts of things. So from an investment perspective, when we're looking to create a portfolio, we're looking for companies or businesses or financial kind of instruments that are looking to deliver those SDGs. And what we mean by that is that we're looking at how a company's products and services and also how they operate themselves. Are they aligned with the SDGs? Are they having more of a positive impact on the SDGs than a sort of misalignment? And that's how we really define what impact investing is and what sustainability is in investing.
I like the idea of achieving the donut. I think that's what I've taken from this lesson. Nancy, do you want to perhaps explain, maybe with your international hat on, or because you do quite a diverse, you've got quite a diverse audience for your work, how you talk to a different audience about philanthropy, sustainability, I can say the words, and how they come together, or perhaps how they're different?
Thank you. Well, it's very interesting because I think, first of all, the word philanthropy just raises a bar for people. And sometimes we forget that what people that are talking about philanthropy, they do think of the Bill Gates model. And actually, as you started this conversation with, helping someone across the street is an act of philanthropy. So I think we need to go back to starting to say that we look at a very diverse range of things and people and their interest and where they're going with this. And in some places, of course, in some governments, they are encouraged by a legal system, a tax system that encourages financial support of charitable organizations. So that's the sort of North American model of tax deductions, where you can give away anything. I mean, people have given us airplanes and ships and various things because they get tax deductions for doing so. And we didn't have to get them in the office. They went on to the charities where they were supposed to go. But that is, it's not that the tax drives the donation, it's just that it encourages it and encourages it in other ways. Obviously here, gift aid is a very different mental process of saying to the charity. And when we talk to charities outside the UK about fundraising internationally, we mention gift aid to them, and nobody's ever heard of it. You know, it's one of those things we invent, and that, you know, everybody thinks it's absolutely amazing, but nobody's ever come up with it. So, you know, actually we get a lot more people wanting to fundraise in the UK once we mention gift aid. The idea of 25% more for nothing is absolutely amazing. But then there are places like Sweden that don't have tax deductions of any sort, and that doesn't mean the Swedish are not charitable or philanthropic. So you know, so we're looking at a whole range of things. We're looking increasingly, I think, also at companies, and I would say that the biggest thing with companies is looking at embedding philanthropy in their business model, because they're looking at thank God, a more sustainable business model, and embedding philanthropy from the very beginning gives a head start both in attracting decent staff, because the staff are interested in the company they work for, attracting customers to that brand, and it's not just about saying, oh, we've chosen, you know, children in need and we're going to give £10,000 to that. It's really about embedding the entire the philanthropy and care for people as part of that. And I think that's one of the areas where we're seeing a huge amount of sustainable growth in philanthropy, but also growth in sustainability for what philanthropy produces. Sorry, I've talked too long.
That's great. No, it's great, Nancy. Question goes to Rachel, but I'm going to throw in another angle to it, and Kate, I'm going to target you as well, because I think Nancy brought up a really good point there. The next generation, there is a growing interest in associating their life, their values, their assets all together. It's a really holistic view. So perhaps, Rachel, your conversation with you about philanthropy, sustainability, and perhaps the generation of people speaking to. And Kate, I'd love to touch base with you after about the generation that are talking to Tribe about their interests.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting reflecting on the types of people we have these conversations with, because actually they're incredibly different. Philanthropy is, if you go for love of humanity, it's just people. It's people giving money to causes that they care about. I would imagine that everybody in this room has given a gift to charity at some point in your life, even if it's just, a couple of pounds to the PTA or sponsoring a friend to run a marathon. People give for all sorts of different reasons, and they have all sorts of motivations. And when we have these conversations, it's one of the joys, actually, going back to what Kate was saying, it's one of the joys of the job is having a conversation and understanding people's interests, their motivations, and their position. And they might be in all stages of their lives. We do talk to young people, and we do have a sort of, especially people with inherited wealth. I think we find that a number of people who have an inherited wealth kind of feel like there's a burden associated with that, a burden of privilege, and there is an opportunity through philanthropy or through other choices that you make with that wealth to allow you to do good in the world, but also that allows you to enjoy your position a little bit more. We also meet lots of people who have not come from a background of wealth and who have either been very successful in their career or run a business, and they've got to a point where they've sold that business, or through an inheritance or through a divorce or whatever, they've come into a wealth that they never ever thought that they would have or need. And then that also can be quite a big sort of mental shift around, well, what does that mean for me? What's that my position? How do I fit in the world and within my values, which I think we'll move on to values in a minute. I did also want to add a little bit about sustainability. Looking at the definition of sustainability is something that's ongoing. Work a lot with people who don't really want their giving to be sustainable, in the sense that they want to give their money away. That's what they want to do. They want their own well-being and their own lifestyle to be sustainable, but the excess of that, they want to give it away, and relatively quickly sometimes. And that, I think, is great. I think that's something that we really want to support. I don't think the model in which there's an ongoing need for philanthropy that's sustainable year in, year out, and, people sit on a pile of money and give away just the interest they earn, and the money sits there. It's not an approach we take. It's something I think to think about in terms of what you mean by sustainability and what your role is within that.
That's great. Yeah, we could definitely go into long spend out foundations going in perpetuity or spending out, but maybe we'll do that for the Excel thing next year. Kate, where do you sit with a generation who are interested in philanthropy, sustainability, or the investments through Tribe?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because we are a wealth management business. We've never set out to kind of target a specific group of clients. But fairly quickly, we realized that we were attracting a very different type of client base through our approach to investing. And so we've consistently, for many years now, had over 50% of our client base are under the age of 45. Also over 50% are female as well. So actually, as a business, we have a very, very different kind of group of clients. And I'm sure lots of people here, many people have been at conferences where there's this huge conversation. I can't tell you how many times I'm at conferences that people talk about this generational wealth transfer, and you see all these chaps sitting on the stage scratching their heads about where all the money's going and how they're going to keep it. And I just sit there going, I know exactly where it's going. It's coming inbound to Tribe on a weekly basis. And if there was ever a reason to engage with sustainability and philanthropy as a financial advisor, it's frankly for that. Let's be totally kind of selfish about the whole thing, because our clients want to have a different connection with their money. They are frankly living in a world that is hugely challenged. I think for the first time ever, we're working with a generation who wonder what the world will be like when they leave it. And that is a genuine concern. And so that desire to do something with your money and to place it somewhere where you are thinking about the solutions to those issues is not just a nice to have, it's a necessity, actually, for a lot of young people now.
Okay, we're going to go next question, which is, why is the word values coming up in so many panel discussions at the moment? Do you think it's a fad we're just going to forget about, or is it just the new future? Nancy, I'm going to target you on that one, particularly because of what you do and because Nancy's got quite a fantastic international hat on her head when she's talking about how much values comes into your conversations with your clients when you start the conversation, or is it something that develops over time?
Well, values is a bit of a buzzword, isn't it, about the fact that your funds need to follow your values, and when you're giving money or you're involving yourself with charities, you want to highlight the value of what you're doing, but also there's a real sense of alignment between what do I think about the world and what are the people that we are supporting thinking about the world. And but I think it's always been there. I mean, I think it's one of those things that it's a great thing to talk about. I mean, but the reality is, but I think it also comes back to when. So you're looking at there's two sides of this equation, aren't there? There's the side that is the money that's being invested and the values about where the investments are going and the organizations that money is going into. Then, in sort of my world a bit, where we're giving away the money, we're getting rid of the money that you've invested, what does the value of that particular organization look like? And and how am I giving it? Am I just giving you a check? Am I doing a wire transfer? Do I want to be on the board? How involved do I want to be? Do I want to choose the elephants that you're looking after? Do I want to just let you deal with it? If I do, and this is also where we're seeing the younger philanthropists saying, I don't want to just give you the money. I want to know every single thing about what this organization is doing in terms of how it's doing its charitable activities. And I want to be involved in that. So is it a buzzword? I would say from my standpoint, yes. Is it a valuable concept? I think absolutely, and it always has been.
Rachel, how about you? How does the word values come up into your conversations?
I was thinking about this question when I was on the train over this morning, over the Pennines. And actually, I'm going to share a personal anecdote around this. 2010, I was living in New York, and I was volunteering at the Guggenheim Museum on the visitor information desk. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Guggenheim, it's a beautiful building designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And it has a spiral central rotunda. And normally you walk up that spiral and it's filled with artwork. It's beautiful. You should go if you get the chance. And then when I was there, though, there was an exhibition by an artist called Tino Segal, who's a German artist. He absolutely would not describe himself as a performance artist, but all his artwork involves people and interactions with people. And this particular exhibition, you walked up the spiral, you started at the bottom, and you walked up the spiral, and you were met along the way by different people who were part of the artwork. It started with a young person, a child, moved up, and then there was a teenager and an older person, and as you got to the top, there was a person I don't want to say elderly, an older person would meet you towards the top. And I had a conversation with the older person who met me, and she was talking about a period of her life where she felt the most fulfilled. And that was when she was in the 60s. She was working on a feminist magazine. And she said that what happened for her during that period of her life is that she was making progress with the world. She could see the change that she wanted to happen in the world, and she was helping to progress that. But she was also progressing her life as a person. She was learning new skills. She was meeting people. Her life was becoming enriched at the same time that she was working towards this wider goal. And I think that's when we talk about values and we talk about values alignment, that's what we mean. And I think obviously this conversation stuck with me, and I remember it very well. And it's not a coincidence that I started working in philanthropy in that very year. But I do think this, and I think the reason I wanted to tell a personal anecdote around this is because that is how your values are shaped, is through these personal experiences that you have. And I think having those conversations and understanding the joy that you can have when you know what your values are and how those values can be put into practice. I mean, everybody in this room, if you've come to this conference, you have values and you are values-led, and you've made choices around your values because you're here at a conference that is focused around sustainability and the environment and the green economy and what that means. So you're making those choices anyway, and people do make those choices actively. And I think understanding that and unlocking that is incredibly powerful. And I think if we all were able to do that and to have those values-based conversations with the people you work with and your partners that you work with on a regular basis, that's where we all become fulfilled. And that makes the world a better place when it comes down to it, I think.
I love Rachel. That's an actual case study. And I think that does actually, I'm going to ask Kate sort of about values and the work that she does, but also perhaps case studies, particularly if we're talking about your clients are the younger millennials, the next gen, how they interpret matching their values with their sustainable investing and how that word fits into your client base.
Yes, hard act to follow, and lovely story like that, Rachel. But it is interesting because I think it goes to the point that I think values are what anchor you, but they're also highly personal as well. And so one of the issues with this term values, and everyone sits up here and says you should do values-aligned giving or values-aligned investing. The truth is that means you need to get a little bit uncomfortable and a bit personal with your clients and the people that you're speaking to. Often that means you have to probably know what your own values are and be willing to talk about that openly. Again, in financial services, as advisors, we're not terribly good at being open about what drives us and who we are as people. So that's something that I've observed is working in this space. I've had to become a lot more open as an individual. The way that we do it at Tribe is that we use, again, those sustainable development goals as a way to kind of articulate what values might be to a person, partly because if you walk into a room and say, what are your values? Frankly, it might be a little bit strange and affronting. So we use the SDGs to guide us, and it's a really beautiful way to understand kind of what change people want to see in the world, whether it's gender equality, for example, perhaps in that lady's situation, or the climate crisis or something like that. And we spend a lot of time talking to our clients about that and not really talking about money, because that's the other thing is if you talk about money and something like values, which is so highly personal, actually, as again from the first keynote this morning, we know as Brits we don't love talking about money. You're creating a sort of very tricky conversation with something that should be much more open. So we try to kind of veer away from the numbers and the uncomfortable conversations and really focus on values to begin with. And that's a great way to get to know my clients. It helps to guide me in terms of how we invest their money, but it also helps me in terms of thinking about how they might want to give. So a lot of my younger clients, I don't give philanthropy advice, but I have a good sense of what they might want to do, and I might work with Juliet or Rachel or Nancy or whatever. But because we've had that conversation, I can provide a much more kind of holistic level of advice. Just in terms of case studies, so yeah, I can. We have something called our Impact DNA process, which is our sort of values exploration process. Within that, we have these amazing kind of cards, which is all 17 SDGs, and we'll sit with clients and ask them to kind of rank them in terms of their own personal priorities, kind of high, medium, and low. And I've had experiences of doing this with families. So we've had kind of parents do it and then the kids do it. And it's quite fun because you can kind of gamify it and they split into teams or they might do it separately. But it's an amazing experience because I can think of one family particularly where they had 13-year-old twins and then the parents did it. And we were talking about both their personal wealth but some philanthropic money that they have as well. And the parents are very socially minded. They grew up in the Midlands. They came from fairly kind of poor backgrounds, so they've had to work really hard to get where they have today. Very, very socially minded. The kids, actually much more environmentally focused. And I don't think they'd ever really been able to articulate this desire to bring a bit more climate thinking into their giving, not least their investments. And by doing this process where we kind of sat there with the cards, we were able to kind of create this amazing conversation. And it's made a huge difference, actually, both to how we invest for them, but also their giving as well. So it was amazing, and it was a real pleasure and a privilege to sit there and be part of it.
I think that's the thing with clients and other people, it's just making it real rather than too academic, too much theory. And it's just, I want examples about how it works, which is why with Nancy, what she does about whether she's got case studies and stories she can share about, you know, maybe one or two particular clients that you've worked with or stories that you feel would be worth sharing with the audience.
Yeah, well, there's two sisters from Indian background, and they came to us because they wanted to give away £20,000 a year, and that's kind of too small for most philanthropy advisors to talk about. And the fact that they actually wanted to do this, they wanted to use their own money. They didn't have to do any of it. They had thought through and had a real look at what things interested them, what things where their values were, but they had, you know, what societal problems they were interested in. Because there's no societal problems that's the wrong problems. There's no philanthropy that's bad philanthropy. And I think as an industry, sometimes we get to the point of saying, well, you've got to do good philanthropy, so that's got to be X, Y, Z. There isn't such a thing. But anybody, in my opinion, who wants to do good is to be commended. And these two young women, I would say early 40s, you know, obviously had come from a reasonably successful family, but they weren't multi-zillionaires. And they were taking their money, and they were going to do some fundraising for, you know, to also add to their amount of money. They were interested in seeing what they could do with their businesses that they each had done in terms of bringing clients and customers in to the fold, and leveraging their own philanthropy with their stakeholders. And I mean, I thought this was the most wonderful model. It wasn't somebody who's got £1 billion sitting in a bank, which is no bad thing if those who do, and if any of you here do. That's wonderful. We'd love to talk to you afterwards, or if you know your best friends do. But to me, this was as important a discussion that I'd had than with the people who had the £1 billion or the $1 billion or the various, you know, pick a currency that were, you know, either going to inherit it or going to give it away. I mean, it was just a very small thing that they had done their thinking. They'd had their cards, you know, and they, you know, so I would say for me that was a really good model of a philanthropy that was both sustainable. They wanted it to be every year. They didn't want to put it into a donor-advised fund and to have it invested and all that. They wanted to actually ensure it got to people who needed it. And, you know, in some respects, that's very old philanthropy, but sometimes old is good.
I think that actually taps in well. Just I'd like to share a case study from my end about a client I worked with last year. And the IFA, I've been talking to about a year about talking to their clients about their excess capital. And he's part of a community of IFAs who all want to engage with their clients about doing something positive with their money. And he emailed me saying, I have a client who wants to increase her giving. All he said. Oh, okay. So he introduced me to the client via email, terribly formal email with lots of dear so-and-so and kind regards. You've probably figured out I'm not really a kind regards person, but apply it when you need to. And she emailed me saying, "Dear Julia, please let me know what you do, what you provide." So I explained. And from my previous conversations with that IFA, I'm like, she must have more than a few bob. She's got quite a lot. So I explained, this is the workshops I provide, this is personalised dummies, da-da-da. She replied very nice, going, "Dear Juliet, I feel this is a bit over what I need and I look forward to progressing this on my own." So I replied, bless her, she said, "Let me know your costs and I will ensure immediate payment." I'm like, I haven't done anything yet. How much money have you got just hanging out? So I replied saying, "Dear client, I do understand that's a lot, but honestly, we could have a chat for half an hour because I understand you want to increase your giving. And if I feel you're fine, you don't need anything else, great, carry on. But if you feel like I could give you some more help, I'll give you a short mini report for X amount, like more than £5, but not much off £5. And she replied going, "Dear Juliet, that does sound more amenable." So we had this chat on the phone, not via Zoom, on the phone. I'm like, okay. And we got halfway through, we got to the end of the half hour, and I said to her, and I figured out by this point, she's in her 60s, 70s, she's doing this all on her own, her children have nothing to do with it. And I said, "Would you mind if I ask how much money you'd like to increase your giving to, just so I can understand if my advice would be applicable to you?" And she, oh yes, I probably should, shouldn't I? And was clearly really uncomfortable with it. She said, okay, fine, yes, I should. Well, my IFA said, after I paid for my care home, which I will clearly need at some stage, I have £10,000 spare, and what shall I do with it? And I'm like, that's great. Thank you for telling me. Now taken out to my ESG, spectrum of capital, introducing you to Kate, donor advised funds. Let me write you a short report and I will give you some ideas about where you could put your £10,000, which I feel matches your values and your intention and what you want to do. And I think the reason I'm sharing this story is if somebody has £1, £10,000, £10 million, and they want to do something good with it, open up the conversation. Don't make it a loaded chat and assume philanthropy, sustainability is only applicable to people like Bill Gates. It is applicable to anybody who wants to do something good for the world around them. So I felt the need to share my case study. Okay, we're going to wrap up with one round of questions, and then we are going to open up the floor. So I really hope you've all been scribbling notes, thinking, because I will pick on you, some poor person I don't know, going, "What do you think?" So be warned, particularly front row. So last question, if you could give one tip or takeaway to the audience, which I think is quite hard because we haven't had one-to-one conversations with you, so I'm not exactly sure what your world is, but we can try. If you could give one tip or takeaway to this audience, what would it be? Kate, do you want to kick off with that?
Mine would be to come and have a chat. It very much kind of plays on your story, Julia. I think it is really confusing, this space, whether, not quite sure if you want to be doing impact investing, if you want to be giving, if you want to be in a DAF, if you don't. We're actually all very friendly people. And believe it or not, if I can't help you, I know at least 3 or 4 other people who can. And so I think it's just that, don't be nervous to come and ask questions. There's no stupid questions. There's a great community out there and network of people who know so much and have got huge experience in this space. So, yeah, no question is too small, and there's always someone who can help.
Great, thanks. Nancy, where do you sit on this?
Well, I think I go back to what I was saying about there's no good or bad philanthropy. And anyone that, whether we're talking about support into the green economy. I mean, we started out talking about the donuts. I think that's absolutely right. We all have to exist on the planet, and and so sustainability has got to be part of every day what we're doing. But in the philanthropy world, there is nothing that is wrong. There is no philanthropy which is bad, and a considered approach is as valuable as somebody who drops a few pounds into a collecting bucket, and both should be as equally lauded.
Cheers, you've had a glass of wine in front of my hand. Rachel, where would you fit with your tip or takeaway from this discussion?
I mean, I think I'm very much on the same page. My takeaway is don't be frightened about giving money to charity. It's not a scary thing. I'm sure you do it already. It's not this whole big thing that it can be built up to be. I think it was great that we were talking about some case studies there, and I think it's worth thinking even smaller, as it were, amounts can be incredibly impactful. Even not into the thousands, a few £100 here and there can make a huge difference to some small frontline charities. So think about your own giving, think about the giving of the people that you work with. There's so much that individuals and companies can do. So yeah, just do it, and it's fun. It's good.
I think my tip or takeaway, it would be easier if we know what industries or sectors you'll work in, but it's a case of, as Rachel said, you're all interested in this topic. This is why you're at the conference. This is why you're at this sort of workshop, this panel discussion, and just be excited, interested in other people and raising the topic. Philanthropy, sustainability, really get to know your clients as people. I touched on when I did my master's sort of 13 years ago, and my dissertation looked at relationship between high net worth individuals, their wealth advisors, and philanthropy. And I went and asked wealth advisors, do you talk to your clients? And they literally looked me up and down and said, and where's my financial compensation for those conversations? And I know missing my point. Your clients want to help save the world, and you can help them for free. Happy days. Well, who's going to pay me? I'm like, who are you? And it's really, for me, only in the last year, maybe, that the wealth management, financial management industry have started to recognize they need to talk to their clients as people, not as a percentage of their AUM. And with a new audience, with a new generation, the next gen, rising gen, they are matching their values with how they approach life. And so I encourage you just to be open and eager with the conversation, and it's only going to go down well. You're only going to get bonus points, and you'll keep the clients because they'll appreciate that their advisor, whoever you are, is talking to them as people, not their bank account. So, questions, people. I want to see eager amount of hands going up. We've got time. Yay! I love all of you. If you wouldn't mind starting, lady over there, with your name, perhaps your industry and why you're interested in the question. And thank you, all of you, for the hands. And I've noted all of you. And we'll stay here till 12 if necessary.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for being here, and apologies, I'm going to be the one, Kate, that's racing to the stage to go, I want to talk to all of you. My name's Miranda Barker. I run a Chamber of Commerce. I'm a professor in sustainability attached to the University of Lancashire, but I run a thing called Red Cat Group, which supports companies developing low-carbon tech to get it into the world. We've got a micro-hydro device that's now in Kenya giving light to schools out of hours. But we've done all of that sort of stuff with public sector money up to this point. And we can all tell where that's going. It ain't coming. So that's the bit that I know about. So I'm now embarking on something brand new, which is setting up a thing called Petrichord Climate Tech, which is a brand new CIC to try and get the philanthropic money in to help the philanthropic side do the climate outputs. And so it's like, help! Yeah. Tell me how to do this, and I'm coming to talk to you, but where should we start if we're...
I think it's a really good question, and we mentioned this earlier, that a lot of the people hear what we all do, and nearly the first question always like, and how do you get to your clients? How do you get the money? And I know Rachel was saying, I'm going to pick on you, does get asked this a lot, so I'm going to target Rachel with how her feedback is. And also, Nancy, I haven't watched it, but there is a fantastic YouTube that I understand she's done, which... I haven't got a link, but these ladies will have it, and it might help direct people who do want to fundraise how they could help to do it. Rachel or Nancy, where would you like to kick off with this?
So I think it's really interesting that you've gone for a kick model. So philanthropic... No, not at all. But I think that when you look at philanthropic funding, so philanthropic funding along the lines of the charities that we support through a donor-advised fund, there is a sort of legal definition to get your tax benefit around what charitable purpose is. And the structure that you choose will influence what funding you can access. So you can, through a community interest company, a KIC, you can access philanthropic funding that way, so long as it's ring-fenced for charitable purpose. So it's not to say that you've chosen the wrong model at all, but I think if you're looking for funding, that is one thing to consider, is look at what your funding model is and what your percentages are and where you see your growth, because it will influence those kind of things. I think moving into the charitable sector as a whole is very squeezed at the moment. And whilst there's lots of people who are very generously giving their money away through funding, I think everybody wants to find a friendly millionaire who will fund your great cause because it's a great cause and it's aligned to their values. Everybody wants that, though. And so I think in terms of looking at those strategies, there's a huge amount of information out there around how you can structure your fundraising. I think accessing philanthropic funding through an intermediary, such as one of us, is probably not, that's the waste of your time, really, because we're very, all of us are very donor focused. The activities that we're talking around is sort of, that's how, and that's what really unlocks the funding for the sector as a whole, but it won't necessarily translate into funding for you as an individual. So there's, it's more around raising your profile and reaching people through active fundraising is the way you do it, rather than through an intermediary. That's what I would say. Nancy, do you have anything?
Well, first of all, I agree that a CIC is going to restrict a little bit your funding, philanthropic funding. So you've got to have, it's useful to have a charity like ours that can help fund you with charitable money. And so an individual donor could give to us, and we then give to you for charitable purposes. So it's a restricted funding. Obviously, then the question is going to be, who's going to fund this thing? And then you've got to look at, there's only four kinds of funders: individuals, companies, private institutional funders, and government. That's it. There's no other, secret out there. But then you've got to figure out why is somebody going to fund it? Is it going to be looking for individuals? There's prospect researchers out there that can help with that. Is it looking at private institutional funders? Then you're looking at, there are lists, for example, of trusts and foundations that make donations. If you're looking at corporates, what's in it for them? Because they're not really in it for the satisfaction. That's the people that run them, but the corporate's going to be generally what's in it for them. And then, as we talked about, then governmental funding is reducing. The CIC models, it is somewhat limiting, but it's not impossible. But you probably do need to, anybody who is in this space of looking for philanthropic money as opposed to, for example, corporate sponsorship, really probably needs to be thinking about who are you going to partner with that's going to help you, have that facility, and why not be able to get gift aid, for example, if you can.
I think we're going to keep going. Kate can touch on that if we get stuck lots of time. But gentlemen, you were going to ask a question?
Thank you for that. Discussion is very interesting. My name is Raj Soren. I'm from Black Belt AI. Two questions. Are you seeing a trend in terms of philanthropic monies going towards certain sectors at the moment? And the second question was, are you seeing a lot of organizations using this as a tax benefit?
Sorry, can you just repeat the questions?
Yeah, so the first question is to make, are you seeing a trend in terms of where philanthropic money is going towards certain sectors? Mm-hmm. And secondly, are you seeing certain organizations using this as a tax benefit?
Good question. Kate, I'm going through my headmaster's questions. Kate, do you want to kick off about perhaps with your SDGs and whether there are certain areas that your clients are interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly see that a lot of client philanthropy is very socially focused. I think there is some I think it was about 4% of global philanthropy goes towards the climate. It's absolutely tiny. There is obviously a lot of additional capital out there focused on climate solutions, but there's very, very little from a philanthropic perspective. There's amazing organizations like Impatience Earth, for example, who are really working to kind of develop climate and climate giving. But it tends to be more socially focused. And certainly what I see with my clients is that there's a high level of kind of place-based giving as well. So clients are often focused on their community, whether that is where they grew up or perhaps where they're based now. And there is still this often kind of strong link to place in terms of giving. That's certainly what I see. I don't know, perhaps if, Rachel, you've got more of a sort of trend analysis.
I mean, there are trends available that you can track. I think we're likewise seeing a lot of, like, actually quite hyper-local place-based giving, where people are giving very close to where they live. But because you give through a donor-advised fund, one of the ways that you can be completely anonymous, and I think that does particularly lend itself to people who are giving within their communities, because they don't necessarily want the recognition to stand out with it. I know this isn't the question that you asked, but I'm going to answer it anyway, because I want to answer it, which is that I have seen a big trend in people using AI to guide their giving, actually, to look for charities to support and also look for mechanisms for giving. It's a huge, the difference within the last 12 months has been staggering around the number of people who have come to us through an AI conversation. That is a big trend. Your other question was about tax breaks. I think that, again, Nancy was talking about the tax structure does reward giving, but I don't think for anybody that's their primary motivator. None of the clients that I speak to, there might be motivations around the timing of their gifts. So sometimes it'll be like, I need to do this before the 31st of January, which is always a fun conversation when you're having that on like the 20th of January, thinking, okay, hang on, right, we have to deal with it. But you do get things around that, but I haven't personally seen anybody that's their, I mean, obviously you have more money if you pay tax on it and you keep it than you do if you get the tax break mostly, but yeah.
Nancy, do you want to touch on that? And I do want to pick up on the question over there.
I was just going to say that because of America has come down so hard on DEI and environmental things, that's been a real problem for a lot of charities. And there's been a real need for charities that are fundraising in that area to pivot. And so instead of talking about environment, they talk about education. Instead of talking about diversity, they talk about education. And that the institutional funders, a lot of institutional and private funders, have tried to pick up some of the slack that's been created by some of the big players being really blackmailed, if you will, out of this market.
Nancy, but just extending on that, if you're talking about with the dip and the lack of funding in the climate, and people are switching, well, nobody's funding this, let's switch it. Do you feel people are actually shifting the language they're using, but actually still funding the same things? And so they're using different discourse with the donors. So we're saying this, but actually we're doing that. Or are they literally having to shift their practice to another area they can see has needs?
I mean, there's certainly people that are shifting the way they talk about it. And there are charities that have gone out of business, if you like, because they just can't get the funding that they got before in the areas they're working on.
5 minutes.
Did
you have a question?
Can I just comment on that? There's two things that we're seeing at the moment, because we manage the investments of a lot of big endowments. Two things. We're seeing a lot of social justice foundations moving assets from the US to the UK and setting up UK registered charities. So I can think of 2 new clients that we brought on in the last couple of months who are doing that. There is a feeling that there is much more safety if you're looking to solve social justice issues in Europe now than there is in the US. And then I think just on the climate piece as well, I think there's a lot in the kind of social investment space there. So it's not so much that there is a lot of space to give there, but it's more kind of structured under that social investment umbrella than the giving umbrella, I'd say.
That's great. Was there a question just down there? I'm definitely asking you, was there anybody else who has burning questions? Because I've just been given a 5-minute thing. Okay, so there are 2 more questions. This lady on the back, and then we'll tap into you. Thank you for asking the questions. I love leads.
Hi, hopefully this will be quick. My name is Joanna, and I'm a sad American in the room. But I was curious to know about how somebody would, be able to choose, or how you'd advise somebody who has a lot of different values and maybe organizations that they're keen on investing in, or giving back to, how you would advise them to kind of prioritize those values, because that can be a bit tricky.
Ooh, good question. From my clients, which are sort of more individuals, and we do the whole values-based exploration exercise, but also it's how do they bring that into practice? Because it's all well and good saying, oh, my value is, entrepreneurship, that's my thing. It's like, well, how are you actually going to apply that to your charities that you choose? How are they actually doing that? And so for me, the way I approach that with clients is, this is your values. This is how I feel like you live those values. These are the charities that I suggest you look at. But for me, the way I approach it is very much, I'm trying to give them, as I said, the dummies guide, so they can do the research. In the appendices, there's due diligence questions. But, there are over 170,000 charities in England and Wales. I mean, it's absurd. There should be another session about that next year. But I think it is really up to them to find it. And I totally take on board your point, how you can't suggest 170,000 charities. So it's really taking time. And if I do talk to people who do have a certain amount of money, they probably do have the time. Or pay somebody else for like 6 months, do it. Do not give away money for 6 months. Do some proper research with little impact on the people you're researching, because otherwise there's too many. I really do feel for you. It's a huge question. And I'm going to go to the next question just to make sure we have enough time to cover it. Oh, she's coming.
Thank you so much. My name is Miran Mokriat. I work in AI consultations with organizations, particularly mission-led organizations, on how to implement AI and do so in a responsible way. So naturally, my question lends itself to technology. And Rachel, you've already kind of touched on how we find capital with AI and what trends there are there. But is there any trends with AI to the rest of the panel and Rachel as well on how we actually identify the impact and evaluate what's happening with philanthropic funds that are coming in?
That's a great question. I don't know whether Kate or Nancy want to pick up on your clients.
I could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah, you've got a minute.
Yes, sorry. Okay, in a minute. I mean, well, you'll have seen recently the kind of launch of things like Claude and software like that in wealth management. There's this kind of huge question of what AI is going to do to financial advice. I actually think that in some ways it creates more value if you're thinking about sustainable investment and things like that, because I don't think at this point in time AI can completely replace this kind of values-led process. There is something about literally sitting in front of a human being, which is very important to understanding values alignment. But there is absolutely a huge role for AI out there in terms of sustainability. The research that my research team have to do to understand SDG revenue alignment, all of those kind of things in the businesses that we're investing in, there is a huge role for technology there. And we will only see that more and more when it comes to kind of ratings and research and things like that in this space. But that is a very short, we can have a whole session on that.
I think Nancy or Rachel, do either of you use AI, or is AI used at all in measuring the impact of the work you do with your clients? Feel free to say no, because not everybody's engaging with it.
I mean, yes, we do. I do use AI, but mainly for helping me write, I think, and rephrase things. I think it's very good for that. I think in terms of research, I agree with Kate, really, that there's a sort of, so much of it can be very personal. And just picking up on the question we had before as well around how you help people to prioritise, because we do provide a list of charities if people want us to, about where they could support. But it's not a very professional language, but I'm going to say it anyway. For me, it's very vibe-based, and actually it's really about I would always encourage people to give to what moves them. As Nancy says, I don't think that there's no such thing as a wrong philanthropy. There's no, once you've done your research and due diligence on a charitable organisation, every social problem is important. So it is really, I think, that's what encourages people to give. That's when they have a good experience giving, and that's when they give again. And I don't think AI can replace that, but what I do think it does do, and I say we get a lot of inquiries from people who've had conversations with AI, is that they can ask very open-ended questions that can lead them to a face-to-face conversation. And I think that I do encourage and support that, is not necessarily asking AI which charity I should give my money to, but asking AI, I'm thinking about giving some money away, how do I approach that? Then that can lead, and it does lead, because we get the inquiries to, we'll talk to people who work in this space. There are people who can support and help you through that process, and that's a good thing, I think.
That's okay. Nancy, we're not making you late for next session, but does anybody want to touch on anything? That last point about AI, snapshots, feel like we've covered everything?
I mean, I would just say, I guess, on the AI side, obviously it does what it does best, which is data. So it can pull up evaluations on what charities have done. It can pull up information on potential donors while screening, that sort of thing. And that's where it really is useful. Yeah.
That's great. I'm going to get in trouble because we're about 2 minutes late. If anybody has questions, come grab us. We are running off for trains. But thank you for the engagement, the talking, sitting at the front. I love Leeds, as I said.